Hello and welcome to Uzbek World News, and my name is Bahram Gaffarov. The Uzbek government is planning to allocate $1.9 billion towards improving the living standards in districts. At a video conference on Wednesday, the Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev instructed the Cabinet of Ministers and district administrations to start construction work in all villages and neighborhoods.
Mirziyoyev urged the allocation of $2.4 million for the construction and repair of drinking water and electricity supply networks, internal roads and social facilities. In addition, over $1.9 million will be allocated for the repair of more than 10,000 kilometers of internal roads in 2,700 neighborhoods, and $94.9 million for the construction of more than 4,000 kilometers of drinking water supply networks in 500 neighborhoods.
The urgency of improving the power supply is increasing. We have plans to repair 1,500 kilometers of power lines and more than 4,000 transformers in 60% of neighborhoods throughout the country. About $2.4 million will be allocated for these activities.
Mirziyoyev also urged to bring 300,000 citizens out of poverty, provide jobs for 500,000 young people and 200,000 women. The government is to allocate $8.9 million towards family entrepreneurship program this year.
Fitch Ratings has assigned Uzbekistan's one and only car maker, Uzauto Motors, a long-term issuer default rating of B+ with stable outlook. Fitch has applied its government-related entities rating criteria and assessed the linkage between UAM and its indirect sole shareholder, Republic of Uzbekistan, to be moderate to strong.
According to the report, Fitch views the status, ownership and control linkage of UAM with the state as strong because there is full state ownership and operational control by the parent over the company's capex and operational strategy. We assess the support track record as strong due to the established state support in the form of shareholder loans on favorable terms, the absence of large dividends paid to the parent, which we expect to continue until the end of the planned large capex program, and the favorable regulatory environment supported by high import duties for cars, protecting the company's dominant position in its domestic market, says the rating. It assessed the financial implications of UAM default as moderate and believes the company would have a moderate impact on the availability of financing for the government and other government-related entities. Fitch also assessed UAM's standalone credit profile at B. This reflects the company's business profile, which is weaker than that of other Fitch-rated car makers, with limited scale, narrow product range, and sales concentrated in Uzbekistan. Their share of exports declined to about 5% over 2018-2020, but the company is aiming to increase this to about 16% by 2023, mainly through large sales in Kazakhstan and Russia. Fitch also observed a moderate impact of COVID-19. In contrast to other global car makers, UAM's earnings were less affected by the pandemic in 2020. The company's sales volume in 2020 increased by 5% year-on-year, although revenue deteriorated by single digits in US dollar terms amid local currency devaluation.
Uzbek authorities have arrested a man suspected of setting up a fake Facebook account under the guise of President Shavkat Mirziyoyev, through which he allegedly illegally collected money from citizens. A 39-year-old resident of the city of Chirchik, near the capital Tashkent, was arrested last month and charged with fraud. Using his fake profile, he entered into dialogue with citizens, introducing himself as the head of the presidential administration. He promised citizens assistance in solving housing issues or obtaining loans from banks. For his services, the man allegedly received fees in the amounts between $5 to $145. These funds were transferred to his account, the Interior Ministry said in a statement on March 24. Uzbekistan is intending to start mass vaccination of the population against coronavirus on April 1st, a member of staff for the fight against coronavirus, Nurmat Atabekov, told on March 24. The government plans to vaccinate 4.1 million people in the country who are at risk for various indicators.
According to Atabekov, the first stage of vaccination will take place with the use of Indian AstraZeneca vaccine. On March 17th, Uzbekistan received 660,000 doses of this drug under the global COVAX program. At the rate of 2 doses per person, the government plans to vaccinate 330,000 people. Vaccination will be carried out in a certain sequence. First, citizens aged 65 to 74 years, 75 to 84 years, 85 years and older. Then, health workers, citizens with chronic diseases, aged 18 to 65. After that, school teachers, preschool employees, military personnel, and law enforcement officers will receive a vaccine. In early April, we expect another 1.5 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine. In addition, Uzbekistan will also purchase Russian Sputnik V, as well as a joint Chinese-Uzbek vaccine, ZFUZ-VAC 2001, which is approved by the Chinese government for emergency use, Atabekov added. He also commented on the situation with the increasing number of infected people. We register approximately 110 to 120 new patients every day. Based on the 100,000 population, this is about 0.4%. However, there is no need to expand the additional number of beds in infectious disease hospitals now. Only a quarter of the hospitals are full. There are no grounds for increasing quarantine measures, but the requirements for the population to prevent infection remain.
The Economic Assembly of Uzbekistan is planning to set up cooperation with 40 Turkish manufacturers. The newly established organization has already united 12 local associations and national centers.
Since its opening 1.5 months ago, the new organization has been struggling to improve the business environment, establishing business relations with foreign manufacturers, and bringing local goods and services to foreign markets.
12 associations are united to establish foreign economic relations. There are many large economic organizations, and the Assembly will become a platform for establishing cooperation between local and foreign entrepreneurs. We will establish friendly relations with them and attract investors. The trip to Turkey was the first step towards attracting large foreign manufacturers to Uzbekistan. 40 partners from them plan to work with us. They will visit us in May. The highest priority is to establish cooperation with them and in the future export.
According to the chairman of the Assembly, the convenience of entering the markets of the CIS countries and China through Uzbekistan interested foreign manufacturers. This makes it possible to increase the exports and quickly learn from foreign experience.
Kenya has ordered the closure of 2 sprawling camps that are home to hundreds of thousands of refugees from neighbouring Somalia. In a tweet, the East African country's Interior Ministry said it had given the United Nations Refugee Agency 2 weeks to draw up a plan for the closure of the Dadaab and Kakuma camps. They were established 3 decades ago and host more than 410,000 people, a small proportion of whom are from South Sudan. The ministry added that there was no room for further talks on the issue. Kenya first announced its intention to shut Dadaab, once the world's largest refugee camp, in 2016, citing security concerns. 2 intelligence reports had indicated that elements from within the camp were involved in 2 large attacks on Kenyan soil. But that plan was blocked by the High Court, which called the move unconstitutional. Now authorities have told the UNHCR that it will take refugees to Somalia's border if camps are not closed. That's according to Kenya's Daily Nation newspaper, in a report that the Interior Ministry called accurate. The UNHCR has urged Kenya to ensure that those who need protection continue to get it and pledged to keep engaging in dialogue. Kenya's move comes as relations with Somalia worsen. Mogadishu cut diplomatic ties in December, accusing Nairobi of interfering in its internal affairs. The pair are also facing off at the International Court of Justice in a maritime boundary dispute. Somali authorities did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Kenya's Interior Ministry said the move to close the camps was not related to diplomatic difficulties.
Ji Hyun Park was left to die unremembered outside a North Korean labour camp. But 16 years on, her life has taken an unexpected turn. She's now running to be a local town councillor in England, and she's sure she's going to win.
I'm really confident because, I already fight this the totalitarian evils twice. So you are my neighbors.
Park is a human rights activist and says she wants to repay the kindness shown by the residents of the town of Bury, an old industrial town, which has been her home since 2008. She is standing in the May 6th election as a candidate for Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservative Party.
We had a lot of problems because we didn't speak English. Electricity, gas, or some letter come to us and we didn't understand. And people really nicely to us. So they give to us a lot of gift. So that's why today my family is in here. So I want to pay back this thankful gift to my residents.
Park's tale is harrowing. She grew up in a mountainous area of North Korea. Hungry and desperate, she fled to China in 1998 with her younger brother, where they both fell into the hands of human traffickers. They were separated. Her brother was never seen again, and Park was sold to a man whose family used her as a slave. Park then discovered she was pregnant and, fearing arrest in a hospital with no ID or papers, she gave birth to a boy on her own.
When my son birthed and I holding to him and I cried and also happy times because I have family now.
The pair struggled on for 5 years before Park was captured by Chinese authorities and sent back to North Korea without her child. Imprisoned in a squalid labour camp, she grew seriously ill from a leg injury and was left out in the elements to die. Against the odds, Park regained enough strength to go back to China. In 2005, she found her son.
I escaped to North Korea again, myself human trafficking to China because I had no money and my condition is really worse. So my decision is have to escape the country first. When I met my son, I really shocked because China family members never care about my child. So my son is wearing the dirty clothes and he never wash up. So he looked like that is a street child.
Park resolved to find a safe place for them to live. She met her now husband during a failed attempt to reach the Mongolian desert. In 2007, a Korean pastor in Beijing put them in touch with the United Nations, which relocated the family to Britain. Park says she joined the Conservatives because of their emphasis on family values and individual freedom. She now spends much of her time helping other North Korean refugees adjust to British life. Although she leads a happy life in Bury with her family, Park can't help but remember the past. She says she doesn't know whether her brother survived, but still hopes they will be reunited one day.
Ahead of a Thursday hearing on Capitol Hill with top social media CEOs, Facebook boss Mark Zuckerberg argued companies such as his should not be liable for content shared by users, as long as those companies followed best practices. At stake is what's known as Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. It's a 1996 law limiting the liability of internet platforms for content shared on their sites. In the text of his opening statement shared Wednesday, Zuckerberg said firms such as Facebook should act to take down harmful posts. But he cautioned, quote, platforms should not be held liable if a particular piece of content evades its detection. That would be impractical for platforms with billions of posts per day. The hearing is titled Disinformation Nation, Social Media's Role in Promoting Extremism and Misinformation. And Democratic lawmakers are trying to draw attention to the spread of misinformation about the coronavirus pandemic in the 2020 presidential election. Both Democrats and Republicans see removing the liability shield created by Section 230 as a way to make social media firms change their ways. Google's Sundar Pichai will likewise defend the law as essential to the free flow of internet speech. But Pichai will propose developing content policies that are clear and accessible, notifying people when their content is removed, and giving them ways to appeal content decisions. And Twitter's Jack Dorsey will lay out steps his platform has taken to tackle misinformation.
Hoyte Konopi never imagined himself farming cannabis for a living. But in 2014, his mother passed away from cancer. she'd struggled to access reliable and quality cannabis on her oncology plan. That led Gonopi to launch Southgrown, a company that produces medical cannabis for export.
We are youth-owned, black-owned, African-born, and we are one of the smaller players, in the context of we haven't raised large institutional capital from existing players from Canada or the like. We've largely raised from African venture capitalists who backed our vision and were aligned with our vision. And now we're having conversations with other partners that are more global in their understanding.
South Africa has strict regulations on the sale of marijuana. But for Gonopi, it was the opportunity to go global that has taken his business higher. Southgrown recently acquired domestic and international licenses to cultivate, process, manufacture, distribute, and export THC, CBD, and CBG containing products. CBD is the non-psychoactive ingredient which is said to relieve anxiety. THC is the main psychoactive compound, and CBG is used for pain, inflammation, and in cancer treatments. Gonopi's first international clients are based in Australia, Israel, Germany, and Poland.
The South African market, to be honest, is really sizable and is significant. But the really massive opportunity is global, is in South African companies that are global in their approach. That's where the significant upside is.
Domestically, Southgrown is launching products such as CBD-infused Rooibos energy drinks. The company says it's also experimenting to create pharmaceutical compounds for treating the conditions and symptoms of a host of ailments, including epilepsy, post-traumatic stress disorder, and cancer.
America's humbled chip giant Intel is trying to stage a comeback. The centerpiece of the manufacturing turnaround plan? A proposal to spend up to $20 billion to build 2 factories in the U.S. and open its semiconductor building factory floors to outside customers in an attempt to increase chip making on U.S. shores. New CEO Pat Gelsinger laid out the ambitious plan this way.
We've seen the growing demand for semiconductors, the digitization of the world, the acceleration of that in the global pandemic has radically accelerated the need for semiconductors. Against that, the world needs a balanced supply chain available across the world. Intel is stepping into that need.
The decision to invest and build new factories in the U.S. comes after a shift in the tech world's dependence on chips made in Taiwan, which many fear could be disrupted due to rising tensions with China. A recent shortage of chips, primarily from Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, has caused factory shutdowns in the U.S. without the key component. Intel says its investment will power 3,000 new tech jobs, 3,000 new construction jobs, and 15,000 long-term jobs in the U.S. Vijay Rakesh, an analyst at Mizuho Securities, thinks Intel has an opportunity to win back business from Asia, where more than 2/3 of advanced chips are now made.
This definitely starts to close a gap that they've had on the manufacturing side. Also with the U.S. government and the federal government and the Department of Defense pushing to have in-sourced domestic manufacturing, I think that puts Intel in a pretty good spot. So definitely they get some tax incentives. They bring the right people back into the fold. So I think that's a good long-term strategy, a pretty smart move here.
But this is just the first step in making up lost ground for investors. Shares of Intel are up 21% over the past year, but that's just 1/3 the gain seen by main rival AMD.
The S&P 500 slid for a second straight session Wednesday, pulled down by big-cap tech stocks. The S&P and Dow had spent most of the day in positive territory, buoyed by solid economic data on factory activity and words of optimism about the recovery from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who testified before the Senate. But by day's end, those gains were gone, with Apple, Tesla, and Facebook all declining. The S&P 500 fell 0.5%. The Dow closed nearly flat. The Nasdaq fell 2%. Despite this week's pullback, the S&P 500 has skyrocketed 77% since lows hit last March. But Aristotle Capital Management Senior Global Research Analyst Sean Thorpe says the bull market is not over.
I don't think we're in a bubble. I think we've got some room to run. It has been a strong period of time, both domestically and internationally. But I think we're okay.
Shares of Intel also pressured the three major indexes, pulling back 2%. The semiconductor giant plans to spend as much as $20 billion to build 2 plants in Arizona and open them to outside customers. Shares of Reddit favorite GameStop tumbled 34% to close near session lows. The video game retailer said it may increase its share offering, taking advantage of the surge in its stock price to fund its e-commerce expansion.
Chinese phone maker Xiaomi is looking like one of the winners from all the troubles over at Huawei. Its bigger rival has been steadily retreating from global markets due to US sanctions, and that seems to be driving a surge in profits at Xiaomi. In the fourth quarter they leapt almost 37%. That took adjusted profit close to $500 million, beating forecasts. Shipments in China jumped by more than a half, with the firm grabbing 15% of the market. Xiaomi ramped up production towards the end of last year, anticipating a drop in sales at Huawei. But a global chip shortage could spoil the party. Strong demand for gadgets from consumers stuck at home has outstripped supply. The drought initially hit car makers, but shows signs of spreading to all kinds of hardware. Xiaomi has called the crunch extreme. On Wednesday, the company's president said the shortage was increasing costs. He said some of that might have to be passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Earlier this month, Reuters reported that chip maker Qualcomm, a key supplier to handset makers, was struggling to keep up with orders.
So far, these have been the latest news for today. Goodbye. Take care.